Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live. We're right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. A lot going on in sports right now. Folks, we're about 2 weeks away from college football and 3 weeks away from the NFL season. I can taste it. Football, it's back. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. Football's almost back. And a lot to talk about in football. But I'll start the show by talking about basketball, talking about LeBron James. He expressed some frustration about not getting a single vote by 10 NBA execs and scouts as the best player in the NBA. And I'm here to explain why they're actually correct. He's no longer the best player in the NBA. Also going to talk, going back to football, about Cam Newton, Mac Jones. Both looked really good last night in their dominant win over the Philadelphia Eagles. And trust me, I will get to Philadelphia later on the show as well. But I'll explain to you why there is a clear number one starter for the New England Patriots. There's a clear number one, and I'll get into that later in the show. Also, Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, made another boneheaded move. And I will get to that later on the show as well. And to finish the show, Larry Fitzgerald all but announced his retirement in a way on the radio recently with the great Jim Gray. And so I will get into that later in the show and why I think he should go ahead and retire. So a lot to get into on the show today. Let's start with LeBron. Now, LeBron James, in a recent poll with 10 NBA executives and scouts, did not get a single first place vote as the best player in the NBA. In case you're wondering who got the 10 votes, 5 of them went to Kevin Durant. The other 5 went to Giannis Antetokounmpo, which I've said on the show, I think those are the 2 best players. I think Giannis, the way he played in the playoffs and the way he played in the finals, that cemented himself for the moment as the best player in the National Basketball Association. But KD, coming back from an Achilles injury 2 years ago, the way he looked this season and certainly in the playoffs, elevating his game when his team needed him the most, though he did not get the win, he was excellent. Matter of fact, he was legendary. I got KD too. But when you look at LeBron James last season, what do we know about the NBA and what do we know about sports? It is a what have you done for me lately league. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. What did you do most recently? Can't just go off resume. LeBron actually had a really good season last year. Like, he did. You look at his numbers, 25 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. That's a very good season. You'd take that in a heartbeat, right? For your best player. But what do we see from LeBron last year? Even before the ankle injury, and albeit he was not the same once he came back after injuring his ankle against the Atlanta Hawks in an afternoon game at the Staples Center. Solomon Hill dove into his ankle. LeBron went down in pain. Actually came back and hit a 3 and then went out of the game and was out for about a month and a half. And once he came back, didn't look quite the same. But last year, LeBron was 36. Year 18. Like that does factor. LeBron's not the same now as he was even in 2018, in which I argue was his best playoff run. Even though the Cavaliers in 2018 did not win the finals, that was LeBron's best run. That was the greatest run of his entire career, 2018. The way he played against the Pacers in the first round, dominating the Raptors in the second round. They called him LeBronto because he just owned them guys. The way he dominated the Celtics when the Cavs survived in 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, and though he got swept by the Warriors, that game 1, dropping 51 points on Steph, KD, Draymond, Clay. All-timer. And he played fairly well the rest of the finals as well. He's not that same player. Now, he is still great. Saying somebody is not the best anymore does not mean they're not great. Doesn't mean that. Saying Prince isn't better than Michael Jackson does not mean Prince wasn't great. He was. But Michael Jackson was on a whole nother level. Same here with LeBron James. He's still great. I've been on the record on this show saying next year, this upcoming season, and by the way, the schedule actually came out today, so that's exciting. But this upcoming season, beginning in mid-October, I think LeBron's going to be a finalist for the MVP. I think he's going to have a tremendous year. That does not mean he's the best player in the league. The way I look at it is, how did the best players in the NBA go out? Their last game of the season, how did they go out? And to me, the top 4 players in the National Basketball Association, I said it on the show, I ranked my top 15 players. If you want to go look back at that, you can. It's about a 20-minute segment. It was fun, ranking my top 15 players. But my top 4, from 1 to 4, Giannis, KD, Steph, LeBron. Now, let's start with LeBron, since he's number 4. LeBron's last game of the season for the Los Angeles Lakers. It was an elimination game in the first round against the Phoenix Suns. Anthony Davis played. He may as well not have played at all. I mean, I said on the show going into game 6 of that series, AD had no business playing. He was not healthy enough to go. And what happened? 2-3 minutes of the game, he re-aggravates it and he's out for the rest of the game. Like, there was no point in playing Anthony Davis that night. And there was no point in putting him out there. And the team is like, oh, great, our star's back. And then it's a big letdown when he's out of the game. Like, that was a bad move by Frank Vogel, the head coach. But LeBron, season on the line. The chance to possibly go back-to-back on the line. He was good. Not spectacular. In this game, the Lakers fell down as many as 30 at home against Phoenix. Against a Chris Paul who was not totally healthy. But LeBron shot 42% from the field that night. Scored 29. That's good. It's good. It is. To go along with 9 rebounds, 7 assists. You'll take those stats any day of the week, along with 2 steals, by the way. But I said on the show 2 months ago, going into that game, we need to see a 2018 LeBron. And he couldn't do it. That's not a knock on LeBron. People saying, oh my God, he lost in the first round. Jordan lost 3 times in the first round. You know what I'm saying? Like, Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time. He lost 3 times in the first round. This is the first time LeBron's ever done it, and it happened in the West. Jordan was in the East, which you could argue might have been stronger than the West at the time, but that's another discussion for another day. And so let's look at Steph Curry. Steph Curry, what was the final game he played last season? Memphis Grizzlies play-in game. That was an elimination game for both Golden State and Memphis. The winner gets in the playoffs as the 8 seed, going to play the Jazz, and the loser's season was over. And Steph on that night dropped 39. He was Steph. He hit big shots, kept them in the basketball game. In regulation, hit the 2 free throws that tied it. He was great. He was Steph Curry. By the way, Steph last season averaged 32 points a game while getting double and triple teamed. I've shown the images on this show of both Joe Ingles and I can't remember the other, Royce O'Neal. Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal all over Steph, like hugging him almost, making sure he doesn't get free. And then a night later against the Phoenix Suns, Golden State played Phoenix, and at the end of the game, they did not double Steph Curry. They didn't triple team him. Folks, they quadruple teamed him. They put 4 dudes on 1 man. That's how great he was last season. Had the best season of his career as far as I'm concerned. I don't think LeBron at this stage could have done that. What evidence do I have? At this stage, because Game 5 and Game 6, when the Lakers were tied 2-2 with Phoenix with Anthony Davis out, they needed LeBron to carry them. And he couldn't. Not necessarily a knock on him. It's just the truth. He was good. But wasn't like, okay, that's LeBron legacy game right there. Wasn't like Game 6 against Boston back in 2012. when he dropped 45, 15, and 6 on the Celtics. Or the game I just mentioned, 51 against Golden State in Game 1 of the 2018 Finals. Or that stretch he had in the 2015 Finals against the Warriors, where he was just far and away the best player on the floor for both teams. The Lakers didn't get that LeBron. And so going to my second best player, Kevin Durant. How did he go out? Well, Kevin Durant played the Phoenix Suns. The Milwaukee Bucks. Played the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference second round. In a series that I said going into it, that is the NBA Finals right there. Whoever wins between Milwaukee and Brooklyn, whoever wins that series is going to win the finals. And, of course, what happened? The winner of that series won the finals. But in Game 7, with no Kyrie, and with a very limited James Harden, and we all know what James is in the playoffs. It's not pretty. What did KD do? 48 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. For the record, Game 5 of that series, with no Kyrie Irving and an even more limited James Harden, KD dropped 49, 17, and 10. LeBron's never even put up that stat line. You can look it up. He's never put up that stat line in his career. So while KD lost to Milwaukee, he was magnificent in the series. I mean, unguardable. It drove me crazy the whole series, and nobody was harder than me on Mike Budenholzer, the Bucks head coach, during that series. I'm like, why will you not double Kevin Durant? You're putting 6'5" PJ Tucker on him, and as much respect as I have for PJ Tucker and how he can just frustrate opponents, he can't do anything about a 6'11" dude that can shoot over anybody. You can't do anything about that. Giannis never guarded him. Middleton struggled badly guarding him. I mean, you can't stop that guy. You can't. And then Giannis, who I deemed on this show, who I crowned the best player in basketball. That actually happened to be on July the 22nd. If you want to go look that up on Carving It Up. July 22nd, I said in that show, Giannis is the best player in the world right now. Because in the finals against the Phoenix Suns, he shot 60% from the field, averaged 35 a game, 11 rebounds. Matter of fact, led both teams in the finals in points, rebounds, steals, and blocks. Doing it, shooting 60% from the field. That has not been done, folks, since Shaq. And what do I said on this show? That Giannis is the most dominant player within 5 feet of the basket since Shaq. I mean, it was an all-time great finals. One of the greatest finals performances by a single player we've ever seen. And how did Giannis go out? Well, Game 6, 2021 NBA Finals on his home floor against the Phoenix Suns. All Giannis Antetokounmpo did was drop 50 points. He only had 2 assists, but 14 rebounds and 5 blocks. And what is our biggest criticism of Giannis? The biggest flaw in his game, the biggest hole in his game? Man, you can't trust him to make a free throw. Well, in Game 6, 17 for 19 from the free throw line. When you needed him the most, he was not only great, he was at his greatest. LeBron wasn't. And again, to be clear, LeBron James has cemented himself as one of the 2 greatest basketball players in NBA history. There's no debate. There's no intelligent conversation to be had about basketball if Michael Jordan and LeBron James are not your 2 best players. Whether you think LeBron's the GOAT, and I don't, but I understand those that say that, or Jordan's your GOAT, which he's my GOAT. I think he is. But if MJ and Bron are not your top 2, you don't know basketball. Simple as that. As great as Magic and Kobe and Kareem and Bird and Shaq and Tim Duncan, as great as those players were, not greater than those 2. And LeBron is still great. I just said he's my 4th best player. I didn't drop him to 15th. That'd be ludicrous. But he is going into year 19. This December 30th, he is going to be 37 years old. He's played a lot of minutes. He's still great. He is going to have a great season. But something else to factor as well. 2 of the last 3 years, he's had a major injury. His first year in LA, he had the groin injury on Christmas against the Warriors. Came back and wasn't the same. The second year, to his credit, had an outstanding year, and the Lakers won the NBA Finals. And then this past year, he had another major injury, ankle, against the Atlanta Hawks in March. Came back and wasn't quite the same. But even before the ankle injury, he didn't, to put it this way, didn't put the fear of God in you the way Steph did. I mean, Steph in April, in the month of April, Steph Curry averaged 40 a game, shooting 50% from the field and 40% from three. That's insane. Okay? KD was ridiculous. A video game against the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round. And then Giannis had an unbelievable playoffs, cemented himself as one of the 25 greatest players in NBA history already, and he's only 26. And won the Finals MVP, won it convincingly. Right now, he's the best player. And so, with all due respect to the King, and obviously he was not happy about this, he aired his frustrations on Twitter. Here's the tweet for the podcast audience, or for the live audience. For the podcast audience, I'll read it. He said in all caps, "Thank you. As if I didn't need more to fuel me. Hashtag washed king." He's coming back motivated. He is. He's going to have a great year. But best, you got to realize when you're saying best, you're saying better than everybody. You're saying nobody is better than this guy at what he does. And at this stage, and it's been a very, very long time since we've been able to say this, that without a question, he's not the best player. Without a question, he's not the best player. We've never been able to say that since 2005. I mean, at that time, it was like Kobe and Tim Duncan were the best players. Like, and then LeBron was like, not slowly, he was very quickly starting to emerge as like, okay, this kid is different than everybody else. And then for about almost 15 years, he was the best player. That's not the case anymore. So I think it's very interesting, though, that the execs went 5-5, KD to Giannis. That's very, very interesting to me. I will definitely look out for this list a year from now after this upcoming NBA season, which, once again, as I said a few minutes ago, the schedule released today. So that's exciting. Definitely looking over at my Warriors schedule right now, and it's early on. What I like about Golden State's schedule is that the early first 10 games or so aren't that bad. Now they open up with the Lakers at Staples, but after that, it's not that tough of a road, which is huge because Klay Thompson is not going to be available for the first part of the season. So that's big. So definitely interesting. So a lot of NFL tonight. I would say a lot of NFL tonight. Some NFL tonight. 2 preseason games. And listen, I don't care if it's the preseason or if it's the Super Bowl. I'm going to watch. It's football. It's the NFL. It's the best league, professional sports league we have in this country, without a question. As great as the NBA is and Major League Baseball, it's America's league. No question about it. But we got 2 preseason games tonight on ESPN. This will be a very interesting one because here's the thing before I tell you the games. Preseason week 2, remember there's only 3 preseason games now instead of the usual 4. Now that they added an extra game to the regular season schedule, they went from 16 games to 17 games. They shortened the preseason by a game as well, which I think was a smart move. But week 2 kicked off last night. I'll get to the Patriots-Eagles game in just a second. But Kansas City, Arizona tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN. I would assume that the Chiefs starters will play extensively. Same to be said, I would think, about the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of coaches are different. Like Sean McVay is like anti-preseason. He does not play his starters. Whereas like Bill Belichick, with this new quarterback battle between Cam Newton and Mac Jones, more on that in a second. The second guy, Mac Jones, played well into the third quarter. So, you had that. But the second game, which will be going on simultaneously with Chiefs Cardinals, is Bengals and the Washington football team. That kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on the NFL Network. As far as I know, Joe Burrow will not play. I still don't know the status of his leg right now. Obviously, ironically, it was against the Washington football team last year in which he had just a devastating knee injury in Washington. So I'm pretty sure he'll be ready for week 1 of the regular season. But listen, this is my concern about Joe Burrow going in the NFL, is that Cincinnati's got a bad offensive line. Frankly, they're not that well run of an organization. I have big questions about Zach Taylor as a head coach. I mean, folks, the dude's won like 6 games in 2 years. I mean, he's not the next Sean McVay or anybody like that. I mean, it's not exactly worked so far for him. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, by all indications, is going to play tonight, which will be interesting. I was kind of critical of Washington during the offseason for not getting a true franchise quarterback, because they've got the defense. They've got the skill position players. Terry McLaurin's an excellent receiver. Antonio Gibson really showed himself last year as, I wouldn't say elite running back, but a dude who you could see maybe making a couple of Pro Bowls in his career. He's very talented, good offensive line. Brandon Scherf, good offensive lineman. I mean, I don't know how good of a coach Ron Rivera is. I just felt like the missing piece to maybe even making him a Super Bowl contender was a true franchise quarterback. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, with all due respect, is not that. This is his 9th team for a reason. But I think he'll play, and 2 interesting games to watch. So definitely want to keep your eye out for both of those. But preseason week 2 kicked off last night with a rematch of 2 of the last, 20 Super Bowls. New England Patriots, Philadelphia Eagles. As well know, Tom Brady's 3rd ring was won against Philadelphia, and his 3rd Super Bowl defeat was also against Philadelphia. So a little bit of quick history there. But New England absolutely dominated Philadelphia last night, 35-0. There's the Jalen Hurts thing, which is really weird. He warmed up before the game for the Eagles, and then all of a sudden he was nowhere to be found, and Joe Flacco started, and we found out that Jalen Hurts had a non-COVID-related issue. I think he had like the stomach virus or something, and he went to the hospital. They diagnosed that. It's not a COVID issue, but he's got to stay home for a couple days. So certainly all prayers go out to him and wish him the very best, and to get it back on the field soon. Because I think the kid's crazy talented. I just think he's in a bad situation with this organization, with the Eagles. But the main discussion right now is, who does New England go with? Who do they go with? Cam Newton looked great. Mac Jones looked really good. It's Cam Newton, guys. It is. For a few reasons. Number one, the one thing that Mac Jones has over Cam Newton, he's got one thing over him: accuracy. That's not saying a ton, because Cam Newton's, he's never been known as a precise thrower of the football. That's never been his greatest strength. We all know he can sling it. We all know in his athletic prime how unstoppable he was as a runner. I mean, what are you going to do about a guy that can fly at what is he, 6'5", at least 240? I mean, just a physical specimen. You're not gonna stop that. And we all know Cam Newton's an excellent leader in the locker room. Was in Carolina and is now in New England. He's got a lot of things going for him. Accuracy is probably his biggest weakness. It's Mac Jones' biggest strength. But everywhere else, it's not close. Mac Jones cannot move around in the pocket. Booger McFarland, during the draft, when they were showing Mac Jones tape, he showed Mac Jones tape of the pocket collapsing. Listen, Mac Jones had a lot of time to throw at Alabama. had some of the best offensive lines in the country and the best receiving core in the country for a year and a half after he took over for Tua after Tua's hip injury in 2019. Mac Jones always had the best talent on the field every time he stepped in between those white lines. Every time. Not the case in New England now. I mean, Gunnar Olszewski, N'Keal Harry, Nelson Aguilar, like that's your receiving core. Kendrick Bourne. Sorry, guys, it's not exactly going to blow away Kansas City or anybody or Buffalo in that conference. Cam Newton, number one, second year in the New England system. Remember, in the first 2 games of the year that Cam played, I should say first 3 games that Cam Newton played with the New England Patriots last year, he looks great. That second game against Seattle, it was like, that looked like 2015 MVP Cam Newton. They got the Panthers all the way to the Super Bowl 6 years ago. I mean, it was like, there he is. He came back. Superman came back. And then unfortunately, in week 4, Cam Newton got COVID and was not the same the rest of the season once he came back. And just to be real here, listen, there's a lot of athletes that have had COVID. Jason Tatum, for example, staying in the city of Boston. Jason Tatum got COVID and had to use an inhaler for a couple months. We're talking about big, strong physical athletes. So that's, that just another reminder, please get vaccinated, people. But Cam Newton was great last year until he got hurt, and then he just didn't have it after that. But Cam comes back. He's healthy. He's motivated. Cam Newton knows. Like, Mac Jones, there's not a ton of pressure on him this year. There's not. Rookie year. He's not going to be relied on near as much as, say, Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville or Zach Wilson with the Jets. He's got time to learn. Cam Newton, it's a different story. He knows this is it. This is it for him as a starter. If Cam Newton does not produce this year, it's unlikely we'll ever see him as a starting quarterback in this league again. Now, not saying this is going to be Cam's last year. You'd be an idiot not to sign him to your roster as, say, a backup. He'd be he'd be the best backup in the league. But he knows, this year, I got to produce. I got to make it happen. I got to prove I can stay healthy for a full season because that has been an issue for Cam the last 3 or 4 years or so. He's had shoulder issues and whatnot. So he's got to stay healthy and he's got to win. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so Cam not only knows the playbook better, not only fits the modern NFL better than Mac Jones, but there's more of the chip on shoulder, put up or shut up with Cam Newton this year over Mac Jones. Now, again, for the record, both looked really good. Cam Newton, 8 for 9. By the way, the only incompletion was a drop. 103 yards and a touchdown pass. He had a quarterback rating of 151.4. If I'm not mistaken, the highest quarterback rating you can get is 158.3. He was not that far behind. 151.4. He looked great. Mac Jones, 13 for 19. Buck 46 passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But Mac Jones had long drives for the Patriots, like really long drives, all the way down the field, scoring on that Philadelphia defense. Both looked very impressive. Safe to say Brian Hoyer is not competing for the starting job this year. It's between those two, Cam and Mac. Ironically, you can flip-flop their names and get the other's name. It's very, very interesting there. But Cam's your starter, week 1. I don't know why Bill Belichick won't come out and say, Cam's our guy. Or, in the tone of Bill Belichick, Cam's going to be our week 1 starter against the Miami Dolphins. That's what I'm waiting for. But we'll see. Patriots got one more preseason game. When is it? Next Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific against the New York Giants on the NFL Network. So here's the thing. We will probably know at that point who the starter is because it's likely the backup quarterback will play. And so that's what I'm saying at that point, because every coach around the league has basically said week 3 of the preseason, the final game of the preseason, we're not playing our starters. It's just like the 4th preseason game for years. Like coaches didn't play their starters, which is smart. So by then we'll know who QB1 is for the New England Patriots. Like it'll be either Cam or Mac will play, and then followed by Brian Hoyer. That's where it's going to go. But listen, man, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see where this goes for the Patriots. As I have a comment here from my man John Rivera. Shout out to him for the fan podcast. He says it's going to be Cam. I think it has to be. I haven't heard any reports of Mac Jones just vastly outperforming Cam during training camp and in the preseason. Listen, both looked impressive last night. No question about it. And I'll get into Philadelphia in just a second. But I don't see the point in throwing Mac Jones to the Wolves against the Miami Dolphins in week 1. We all know Miami has a great defense. It's one of the reasons there's no excuses for Tua this year. Like, he's got to show up. No point in throwing Mac Jones out there when, for Cam, this is it. So, looking forward to week 1, which kicks off in 20 days with my Dallas Cowboys taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the world champion, the defending champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, at their home, the GOAT's house, the GOAT's new house in Tampa Bay. Again, for those of you questioning why I've not talked about Dak, that's because I'm not talking about it. Okay, I'm not talking about this shoulder injury. He's going to be ready for week 1. You know, there's a Sports Illustrated article I highly, highly, highly recommend everybody out there go and read it. Dak Prescott was Sports Illustrated, the Sports Illustrated cover story for the newest edition, and it was just a really interesting piece about the adversities he's went through in his life, like with his with his mother and his brother, and obviously the injury last year and contract negotiations. But there was a portion in there talking about Dak trying to get back to 100% from this current shoulder injury, and he was talking to Derek Jeter. And Derek Jeter talked about a time when he came back from an injury and he came back too soon, he rushed it, and he got hurt again. And so Derek Jeter advised Dak, listen, kid, don't rush it. Don't rush it. So he's not going to. He's going to be fine. He's going to be ready for week 1. Let's talk about a team Dallas is going to sweep this year. I think that's me being objective as a Cowboys fan. That'd be the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to sweep Philly. Philly's going to get swept by a lot of people this year. That was an absolute mess. That was a train wreck. Nobody game plans in the preseason, although there is some minor game planning for the second to last preseason game because the starters are going to play longer. And whatever game plan was put in for last night's game, Bill Belichick, as he has on numerous occasions with young coaches, put on a masterclass over Nick Sirianni. Like, Nick Sirianni thus far looks completely over his head. And it's kind of funny how with new coaches coming in, it always seems to be like their opening press conference kind of sets the tone. For whatever reason, their opening press conference sets the tone for what they're going to do with this franchise. Remember Adam Gase a few years back? I know John's in here. He's a Jets fan, so he definitely has some not so good memories of Adam Gase. But remember Adam Gase's press conference when he's sitting there at the podium with some of the Jets upper management, and he's just staring and making all these weird facial expressions. It's like, oh, this is not going to go well. And it obviously, it was worse than did not go well. It was a disaster for the Jets last year and the year prior. Adam Gase was a total train wreck with the New York Jets. He won, he was like 9-23. It didn't work. And then we think about coaches like Nick Sirianni of the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni came in, opening press conference with the Eagles, and I swear to y'all, this is why I call him Coach Teleprompter. His opening press conference, it looked like he was looking at a teleprompter. No kidding. It was like, I'd like to thank the Philadelphia Eagles for this great opportunity to be the new head coach of this great franchise. I mean, it was horrible. It was awful. He looked awkward. He looked over his head. This ain't gonna work. It's just not. So, I mean, Philadelphia had 3 turnovers, did not get in the end zone a single time. I mean, it almost looked like a regular season game. I feel like if these two played in the regular season, that's about what it'd look like. Whoever the quarterback would be for New England, just spreading it all over the field to a New England receiving core, which got better from the last couple of years, but it is still nowhere near elite. Again, I've mentioned the names, like Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, N'Keal Harry, Gunnar Olszewski. That doesn't exactly stack up to Tampa Bay. And they just embarrassed Philadelphia. I don't want to overreact just because it's the preseason, but I don't think this is going to work whatsoever for Philadelphia. Would not shock me in the slightest if Nick Sirianni gets fired after this year. We've seen coaches get dropped after having one really bad season. But I don't see any avenue in which this works. Because you look at the other teams in the division, the Giants reloaded their roster. And I like their head coach, Joe Judge. Don't love him, but I like him. Washington, the team that won the division. Top 3 defense in the NFL. And a great coach in Ron Rivera. And some really good skill position players offensively. Dallas, why I'm not a huge fan of the head coach. You got a top 10 quarterback coming back, a top 5 receiving core, and a defense that is going to improve. And then the Eagles sit there, and Jalen Hurts is about all they got. And again, I like the kid. He showed me some things last year that, hey, maybe, just maybe, he'll be the guy for the Philadelphia Eagles in the future. But where's the support? I mean, Fletcher Cox is still there, but one dude can't carry a whole defense. Darius Slay was just horrible last year. He was supposed to be the number 1 corner, and he was not good at all. Offensive line isn't as good as it used to be. Receiving core, I mean, Devontae Smith, listen, I like him, but geez, he's slim. Like, if you're going to take some hits in the NFL, he needs to put on some extra pounds of muscle. And if that's your number 1, that's really, really concerning. Zach Ertz is probably going to get traded. So there's another skill position player that's going to be gone for the Philadelphia Eagles. Even in what some call the worst division in football, I don't think there's a chance. I'm not even giving Philadelphia a slight chance to win this division. Because management showed us last year they don't do business very well. We all know how last year ended. Matter of fact, it happened to be the very last game of the regular season, Sunday Night Football, national television against the Washington football team. And Jalen Hurts is playing fairly well. And just out of nowhere in the third quarter, he gets benched for Nate Sudfeld. Because they wanted to see what Nate Sudfeld, what he's got. He'd been in the organization for 4 years. I think you would have a decent idea for what he's got. You want Jalen Hurts to get as many reps as possible. I mean, the difference in Philadelphia tanking that game, if that's what they were doing, was the difference in them getting from, if they won, they get the 9th pick. If they lost, they got the 6th pick in the upcoming draft. Nothing drastic. It's not like they would have advanced to the top 3. Just poorly run. John Rivera, John has suggested this in the past. Watson for that number 1 pick. I don't think anybody is going to touch that situation with a 10-foot pole until we find out exactly what happens legally, what happens with what the NFL decides to do in regards to a possible suspension. He's been in and out of Texans training camp. I don't know if that's the Texans doing or the NFL's doing. There's just a lot going on that I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to jump at quite yet. Now, listen, back when Andy Reid was there, they did that with Mike Vick, but all the other stuff had passed. He'd served his time, and he was back out, and they took a chance on him, and I would say it worked. But I think now with Deshaun Watson, there's a lot of question marks. There's more questions than answers. That wasn't the case with Michael Vick. It was like, he's available, he's free, let's see if this dude can play. That was the only question with him is he still got it? And he did. Deshaun Watson it is definitely not a question of ability. I ranked my top 10 quarterbacks yesterday, and I put Deshaun Watson at 7th. He had an outstanding year last year. But there's just a lot of uncertainty with that whole situation. So, and even if they did get Deshaun Watson, like you suggested here with that number 1 pick, their first-round pick, do I still like them to win the division? I mean, he's basically going into Houston, but out east. The offensive line's better than it is in Houston, but the one thing he did have currently, he's still with them. The one thing he does have with the Texans is receivers. Some decent ones. Philadelphia really doesn't have that. And defensively, both aren't great. And coaching-wise, you're definitely not getting an upgrade. I think even with Deshaun Watson, I think the very best case scenario, they're third in their division. I mean, Philadelphia's poor run, Houston's poor run, I don't think it'd really change Deshaun's situation as far as winning games or giving himself a better shot to compete for Super Bowls. But again, as far as him off the field, there's a lot, there's a lot TBD with that. So I don't think Philadelphia would do it yet. Now, maybe next offseason, because listen, I'm no legal expert. I'm going to be upfront and honest about that. Don't go to me for legal advice. But I have heard legal experts talk about this situation, and they've all been pretty clear. It's not going to be over until next year. So a year from now, this would probably be a better discussion for them for 2022, depending on what ends up happening. But right now, too many question marks. I mean, Philadelphia is just a mess. They're a mess right now. So let's go to another team that's a mess. Another dysfunctional organization. That would be the Detroit Lions. And their albatross of a head coaching hire, Mr. Dan Campbell. We talk about coaches at their opening press conference. He's talking about biting kneecaps and getting up and smiling at you. What the heck is that supposed to mean? Biting kneecaps? Oh, boy. Well, Dan Campbell made another boneheaded decision yesterday. He cut the Lions' long snapper. Now, why is that a big deal? It's the long snapper. Who cares? He barely plays. He's only in for special teams for kicks and for punts. Here's what Dan Campbell did. Long snapper's name, the former long snapper for the Detroit Lions, is a guy by the name of Don Mulbach. Never heard the man's name until now. But he had been with the Detroit Lions for 17 seasons. And yesterday he got cut on his 40th birthday. And Dan Campbell, in a press conference, looked completely overwhelmed by just that. He's talking about, well, yeah, I'm a real a-hole. I'm a real a-hole for doing this, almost sarcastically. Like, if he cuts him at the end of the preseason, I don't got a problem with it. There's all kinds of long-time special teams players that get cut. That's fine. You cut the dude on his 40th birthday? Really? You're not aware of the fact that that's the situation. What it shows me is just the little things. Is too much. I mean, we're talking about the same dude. Sorry for the podcast audience. I'll put the picture up for the live audience. We're talking about the same dude that wore a racing helmet to a press conference. I'm not kidding. He did an entire press conference during the offseason with a racing helmet. Here's the comment from John Rivera. Terrible. I mean, come on. What is this? What the heck is this? In a division, I mean, there's not a question he's the fourth best coach in his own division. I think the best, personally, I think it's Matt Nagy. I think Matt Nagy is an excellent coach. That dude does not get enough credit. He got to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years with Mitch Trubisky, who's a backup. He got to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. That's coaching right there. Mike Zimmer of the Minnesota Vikings. Pretty consistent. Didn't have a great year last year, but pretty consistent playoff team. And they'll certainly have a shot to get back there this year. As always, they got a pretty good roster, good receiving core. Dalvin Cook's back. I mean, that's a team that could very well make a run at the playoffs this season, if not a run at the division, maybe. And then Green Bay, while I'm not a big Matt LaFleur fan, I would absolutely take him over Dan Campbell. And there's this Aaron Rodgers guy. Maybe you've heard of him. He's pretty good. I would not be shocked if Detroit has the number 1 pick next year. And that's, by the way, they got Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a pretty good quarterback. But he's got, well, they did draft Penei Sewell, who I love. And I hate the Penei Sewells in Detroit. I hate that for him. But no defense. Really no receiving core. And he's the 4th best coach in his own division. I don't expect anything from the Detroit Lions. If a guy can't handle at a press conference making a mistake and a single, a ball has not been kicked off for this regular season, he ain't cut for this. I mean, just talking about biting kneecaps and wearing racing helmets to press conferences, and then cutting a dude who's been there 17 years on his 40th birthday. It shows me a complete lack of self-awareness is what it shows me. So, man, just terrible. Just, just like John Rivera's comment. It's terrible. What are you doing? What the heck are you doing? All right. Final topic of the day. Talking about a guy who I love. I think everybody loves him. If you don't love this guy, that's a you problem. Larry Fitzgerald. First-class man. Future first ballot Hall of Fame receiver. I mean, he's no question about it. He was not in the playoffs very much as a player, but when he got there, he was unbelievable and came that close. Just, what was this, 12 years ago? Yeah, 12 years ago. In Super Bowl 44, I think it was. Super Bowl 44 against the Steelers. It was 43 or 44, one of the two. It was 43. They play the Pittsburgh Steelers. He almost had the game-winning catch in a Super Bowl. And, of course, Big Ben drove the Steelers down the field and hit San Antonio Holmes for one of the greatest toe tap catches in the end zone you'll ever see. It was one of the 5 greatest Super Bowls of all time, in my view. He's still currently a free agent. And Arizona, the Arizona Cardinals, the franchise he's been with for the last 17 years, has all but said it's his decision. Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach of the Cardinals, said it's his call, his decision. If he wants to come back, we're going to bring him back. And that's what you do. I mean, what he's done for that franchise, you bring him back. And they will, if he decides to. But Larry Fitzgerald this offseason has been almost transitioning into a broadcasting career. By the way, recently, the newest match with Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady taking on Bryson DeChambeau, and Aaron Rodgers, Larry Fitzgerald actually was on the call along with Brian Anderson and Charles Barkley and some of the other golf experts. And he was on a radio show yesterday with Jim Gray, who's one of the great broadcasters of this era, on Sirius XM radio. And Jim Gray pretty much asked him if he was going to be on the field this season or if he's going to transition into a new career, being a commentator. And Larry Fitzgerald said, quote, "For now, I'll be a radio broadcaster." And then he said, "Jim, to be honest with you, I just don't have the urge to play right now. I don't know how I feel in September, October, November, moving forward. But I just don't have the urge. And I think I have to be respectful of that. Football's not one of those games you want to walk out there and play and not be fully engaged and ready to prepare and do the things necessary that you need to do. End quote. This feels kind of cold-blooded. I hope it doesn't. But Larry Fitzgerald needs to go ahead and retire. Again, it's obviously his call. He's certainly earned the right to decide when his career is over with how great of a career he's had. But as I heard Gil Brandt, the Hall of Fame scout for the Dallas Cowboys, as I heard him say recently, he needs to go ahead and hang him up. Because if you go out there, and Larry Fitzgerald said it as well in that quote, if you go out there and you're half in, or, so to speak, you got one cleat in between the lines, if you will, first of all, you could get hurt. I've heard Tony Romo, they asked him one time, because Tony obviously had a ton of injuries his last few years in the NFL, and they asked Tony Romo about the injuries and whether he thinks about them. And Tony said, if I think about injuries, I'm going to get hurt. And if Larry Fitzgerald has any kind of doubt in his mind, he's going to get hurt, or he's not going to be productive. And he's obviously not in his prime anymore, but he could still play. And he'd be a part of a Cardinals receiving corps that's quietly one of the 10 best in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about, you got DeAndre Hopkins, who's a top 3 receiver in the league. You got AJ Green. You got Christian Kirk, who's an excellent slot receiver. I believe Andy Isabella is still there. That's strong. They added Rondale Moore in the draft. Like, that is a really, really good receiving core that Larry Fitzgerald would fit in with beautifully. John Rivera says 1 more year. Again, it's his call, but I think if there's that doubt, if there's that I may not, maybe he needs a year off. Maybe that's what it is, but I think if you're already starting to have those doubts, it's probably time to step away. And I don't want to say, I don't want to see Larry Fitzgerald go. Again, he's won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. He's just a great guy, and an all-time great receiver. But I think at this stage, it sounds like he's ready. He's clearly found a home in the broadcasting business, as I've just mentioned. Probably, maybe he goes on a farewell tour with Arizona this year. Maybe he signs like right before the season. And I'm sure he's in shape. He's dedicated. I just don't think if there's that doubt that in this game, in the National Football League, that you should play. That's just my opinion. But I don't think if that's creeping there, that it'll go very well for you. So, but I wish him all the very best. Again, just a phenomenal human being, and I know he'll make the decision that's best for himself and for his family. And so, certainly, we wish Larry Fitzgerald nothing but the best. So, there you go. A lot of NFL on the show today. Started with a 20-minute LeBron segment. So, loaded show today. Enjoyed it. And with that, that is all the time we have for tonight's show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up on Monday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you're on YouTube, be sure to click that big red subscribe button. Also, be sure to comment. It helps the channel grow. And tap that notification bell to be notified every time we go live or anytime we upload anything to YouTube. And so be sure to do that while you're watching this, or anytime you're watching this show on YouTube. If you're listening to Carving It Up Podcast, we appreciate that. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Every episode is available at 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on those platforms. So until Monday, have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, y'all. God bless y'all.